Hello, again. So I didn't have a time to properly introduce Marina and Jürgen because we have also people here who may not know you that well because these two actually interrupted. Thank you. So Marina has been diplomat for as long as
26 years.
Well, very good, 26 years, and was also one of the candidates of our last presidential election, and now running for
the
European.
most popular one.
Definitely. That's very good. And now you're running for European Parliament, right?
National Parliament and European Parliament.
So you're going to both?
Depends on the voters.
All right. And Jürgen here has, I think you have been part of Estonian parliaments since, what, 1995? This means also like forever?
Yes.
So professional parliamentarian.
And I'm also the best diplomat in politics.
That we all know. That's why we have the beep beep here. And also you have been 3 times or 4 times minister?
More.
More. Okay.
4 portfolios.
All right. So this means that you are also a professional minister. Very good. I think we can start. So first question will be inspired by what we have heard today, and this is a very simple one. Quotas, no quotas. And I'll give a first word to Gunvor.
Well, actually, I think I would agree in principle with my fellow Finn Risto that just left. But I think actually the discussion about quotas and the legislation about Norway and Iceland has helped tremendously. So I would like to extend a thank you to Iceland that is present for that. I think there's one third argument for why personally I haven't liked quotas, and that's it's not maybe always the nicest thing to be defined as a quota person being elected to a board. Normally you want to be elected for your personal capacities. So that's maybe the third argument. But I can see that it pushes things. So that's why the threat of having legislation on quotas, and the European Union is still discussing also this alternative as a European regulation. So I think it's stimulating the national debate a lot in a positive way.
Let's ask the same question from a liberal. Jürgen, do you think Estonia needs quotas in order to have more women in politics and in the boards of the companies?
Certainly not. They are not helpful. I think things tend to be normal in the world, and I think if we push changes, we cause more conflicts, more discrimination, and I can say that there is positive discrimination in politics in many areas already in Estonia, and this is enough. For me, I think I can say that I am like discriminated person. I'm middle-aged man, and I always know that my chances are smaller than women of the same qualification.
Marina, do you want to comment
Marina,
on that?
she's more popular than me.
Well,
and she's younger than me.
That was an interesting conclusion, but coming to a question. What I want to say first, it's really interesting that even Finland is now discussing whether quotas or not.
I meant private companies only.
But still, I remember some
not political organizations.
Let's say some 5-6 years ago, it was quotas. But now there is discussion about it. Personally, I've seen both. I've seen countries where quotas have changed. Political life, political climate. For example, I've been talking to women parliamentarians from Rwanda, who got into the parliament as women with the quota, and second time they were elected, not within the quota, but by themselves. What I also think, that you can't and you shouldn't impose something if society is not ready. And if I look at Estonian society, I'm sorry for the comparison, but we're like anonymous alcoholics. We have said that, yes, we have the problem. We have taken even some first steps. But at this point, I would argue we are not ready to introduce the quotas it's difficult to agree with Jürgen because on these topics I never agree with him, but I have to say that here he has a point. That if something is compulsory, something is imposed from above, and society is not ready, then it might be not so useful. But again, my final remark is that there are different practices worldwide, and each and every society, each and every country has to find its own way.
But what do you think, what's the Estonian way then?
I think that at the moment we're having discussion. At the moment, I don't feel that there is so much maybe anonymity or not so many people against, but at the moment I also feel that we have promoted other measures. Other measures, for example, being examples, role models. I come from foreign policy. UN has been discussing 50-50 for how many years? 50? When UN will have the first woman Secretary General, where NATO is having the first woman Secretary General. So I'm coming from politics. Let's look at them, and let's look at the good examples. And another good example, I come from diplomacy. When I was ambassador to Moscow, there were 141 men and me. I would say that American women changed the pattern. When 3 foreign secretaries, Madeleine Albright, Condoleezza Rice, and Hillary Clinton showed the whole world that a woman can be a foreign minister of one of the biggest and greatest states in the world, it changed thinking. Now there are much more women in diplomacy as ambassadors. Now there are many more women foreign ministers. So it's not only imposing, but it's also promoting, role modeling, and supporting. Does it make sense?
Yeah, it does. Ásmundur, do you think Iceland has enough role models?
I think we both need, in Iceland, for my opinion, is that we should use quotas, as I said in my speech. But we need both quotas and role models and other tools as well, because you can't only have quotas. You need to have more ways to support this. But the thing I want to mention here, because we're talking about politics, is I mentioned earlier that we had a discussion in the parliament where all the MPs came together to discuss gender equality for a whole day. And we discussed it, the men together on the different parties, and then women, and then we mixed it and discussed it again. And the discussions there were that in politics, which can often be, it's been a man world where it's allowed to put out the elbows. And for women, they said, when we were discussing this openly, that this kind of politics were harder for women than for men. And that's what they felt. And we have seen in Iceland in politics that women tend to be for shorter period in politics than men. And maybe part of that is why we need the quotas, why we need to have quotas, because we want to have men and women, and we have established that. And I think that is through quotas or some tools that you use to have it more equally 50-50, men and women representing each party, each area, or so on. But for Estonia, you will have to decide.
Thank you.
Can we just wake up tomorrow morning and see that, oh, the change has happened? Is it possible? You're in parliament. Do you think members of Estonian parliament can initiate something to help this change? Role models, perhaps?
I have no idea. I really don't know. I don't think so. Yes.
Okay, I'm going to change the topic.
Yeah,
Gunvor, did you want to add anything to this?
Well, I would say that what I think, first of all, when you look at business life, at least in Finland and probably also the other Nordic countries, it has changed immensely the gender roles over the past 20 years. And one thing, except I would admit that the legislation and the discussion on quotas have probably pushed things in the right direction in all countries, but also the need for transparency that has come through the increased regulation for especially listed companies, where you have much more transparency on nomination processes, on reporting, and also, as we have now in Finland since 2016, that actually you have to explain why you don't have diversity in your organization or in your board. And you have also to put targets, and you have to describe what exact actions you have done. So this all increased transparency around all nominations have also brought the question of diversity, which is much more than women. It's also the need to have much more non-Finns on board, for example. It's to have young and old people. It's to have different professions. And I think the whole discussion around increasing the number of women has also actually brought other kinds of diversity to the leadership of this business life. So I think it's many things that have pushed this positive development that we see. Doesn't mean that we have a lot to do still, definitely.
Marina wanted to comment.
Yeah, well, it's so good to be on the same panel with Jürgen. He never speaks, so I can have his time. But what I wanted to say was, when I was foreign minister, and we were having interviews with people who participated in the competitions were heavy, 20 persons for one vacancy. And I asked always one question: why are you joining the Foreign Service? What's your aim? Boys, without any hesitation, we want to become ministers, ambassadors. Girls took some time, they thought about it, and they started discussing, I love foreign culture, I've been to those countries, I want to contribute to my country as a diplomat, whatever. So the level of ambitions was much, much lower. So what I want to say is that Gunvor mentioned some of the methods, but we should also encourage and support those who want, so that if somebody wants to join politics, we have to be very open and frank about it. It's not easy. I did it a year ago. They took me to pieces, put together. When I was on a visit with Timo Soini to Australia and New Zealand, nobody paid attention to what Timo was wearing. But everybody was discussing my purse. So you have to get used to that. But if you want, then you have to know how does it really work, and we'll support you. We'll support you, we'll be open, frank, and supportive.
So Jürgen, has anybody ever commented on your purse?
Yes, very often. I'm always incorrect in words and behavior and everywhere. But I thought, listening to Marina, that it means I am a woman, because I had to spend 10 years in universities, 3 universities, and 10 years in the parliament until I was invited. Actually, I didn't want to become a minister. My ambition has always been lower than what has happened. So.
And you've been 4 times minister, come on.
Yeah, yes.
No ambition, 4 times minister.
I have never asked this post. I have always been asked to come to the parliament. That's right. And so, but it is in the ambition in politics tends to be too high in most people. So I don't think it's actually normal.
But what about education? Can we change something there so that when girls grow up, then they already have the ambition, they have the self-confidence to take those challenges? Because I have experienced exactly the same. I also train a lot of female politicians, and I see the difference. The ambition level really is different. Anything you've done in Iceland regarding education?
There's a big discussion about that now, and discussions between the education sector and the gender equalities that we should start earlier, because we also see the trend that younger people, they think differently than the next generations, and that's how it is. That we should start earlier by educating about gender equality, about gender stereotypes and such on, because by doing that, then by starting there, then we will change more in the future. That's where the future lies. So there's a discussion about changing the educational system to start more, teach more gender issues and so on. So I think that's a very positive thing.
So Gunvor, Finland has one of the best education systems in the world. Anything to learn from it?
I would say today I think you can almost say that women are better educated than men in Finland, and especially when you look at younger generations, that's actually causing other kinds of challenges that society needs to deal with. But I think it's not only about education, it's a lot about the courage and the self-esteem. I used to tell young people that you should, as a girl especially, you should become a scout. It's very good to be a scout because you learn leadership in practice. Actually, looking at scout statistics, a very big number of scouts worldwide have become leaders. And also, as a parent, you really need to challenge your daughters, I think, to not to say, to take challenges, to say yes. And what I think the educational system can do is to push also girls to study more mathematics and natural sciences. I think that's where one of the divides really is. It's not in medicine or many of the other professions. So there are things that can be done. And what I would say, the last thing I can't stress enough is the welfare state arrangement around daycare, equal parenthood, all these things where society can help young men and women actually have a decent career on an equal basis. That's really important for you politicians to work on.
Jürgen, comment?
I do not used to be silent. Marina is not telling the truth, but I am trying to be silent on toxic issues. But education is not so toxic. I can comment on it. We all represent the best education systems in the world, I think, at least best schools. And we have similarity, but how it influences gender equality. First, at schools, boys are always discriminated. It's even discussion whether they could start later to be better ready. Always girls are better at school, and then the final is also, as you said, women are better educated by years. But where comes part of inequalities in salaries is the choice of specialities. Clever girls still choose software areas, yes, and those tend to be less paid. So the ambition of boys maybe is one, but what also via education system helps them still pass women in salaries. They try to choose maybe often more boring but better paid areas.
In our next session,
in the universities.
In our next session, we are actually going to have a very interesting research exactly on the topic from Denmark. So we're going to have more insights. But let's talk a little bit of the topic, and let's talk about money. So and money regarding the pay gap. In Estonia, it's close to 20%. Even in Finland, I was totally amazed when I read that it's 16. It's rather high. And all over Europe, I guess this is a serious issue. Now, is it a problem? Is it a real problem? Because the research shows that in some cases, it's actually just also because there are jobs that are more riskier, need more physical power, and are therefore also better paid. And so this is some part of it that creates that gap. But there is also a huge gray area that we are not able to explain. So you want to comment on that and how it actually stops the development?
I think there are many reasons for that. First of all, I've been recruiting a lot of both men and women for different positions. And generally speaking, I would say that almost always men ask for more payment from the start than women with equal qualifications do. So meaning that you already start higher, it's difficult to actually close that gap later. That's one thing. The other thing I think is that women more often tend to end up in, even if they are in at the leadership management level work, they tend having support functions instead of direct operational functions, which also means that you're paid less. And then I think asking for the pay raise also and negotiating, being brave and sort of bold in asking for compensation is maybe more often, it's easier for men to do that. It's again about the self-esteem and the self-confidence. So I think at least those factors. And then, of course, it's not only the employers, it's really also those who employ you who maybe have a biased or chauvinist in the way that they look at the work. That's, of course, also one factor.
You want to comment?
Chauvinist.
What about Estonia? Yeah, of course.
This is a little bit like alibi for Estonia, that in Finland there is almost the same gap. How it has to be treated, I think one way is that the chief must follow the equality in the way that if a woman is asking less, you should pay maybe even more, at least compare all the time, not only what is asked, but also who is getting already on the same level, how much. And certainly it is a problem. But now I'm becoming a little bit toxic, but I think there is still a wider agreement in the society about role division, which is not 100%, excuse me, which is bad, but not 100%. There is still an element of agreement where ambitions lie and where men feel they should be allowed to be men, and women are also appreciating men if they are earning more. So there is something which is can't be regulated. I would like to tell more.
Yeah. Okay, who goes first? No, you agree between each other.
Yes, is it a problem for Estonia? Of course it is. Of course it is. It's not normal that there is such a big pay gap, and Finland is not excuse. Of course it's a problem. There are many reasons, but I would also have to say that there are some reasons that I personally 100% can't understand. How come? Because if I look historically at Estonia, our women are better educated. I would say that our women are more ambitious than maybe women in some other countries, and still we have the pay gap. So I'll come back, the level of ambitions. We've taken, I would say, one first step when I think it was decided by parliament or government for the public sector to make salaries public. So I see that the next step might be or should be the same for private sector. So to see what's really happening. It's always a tricky question. And my husband comes from private sector and now he hates me. But I'm going to say that maybe...
I hate you.
You hate me already. But maybe that's something to follow the example. And one topic I'd like to bring in is what Minister mentioned, stereotypes. Read at the title. When my son learned that I'm going to chair the Global Commission on Stability of Cyberspace, he laughed. Because I'm not a programmer, I don't know how to repair computers, and I had to start breaking stereotypes. That cybersecurity is not about IT geeks. It's about diplomacy, it's about awareness raising, it's about education, it's about digital economy. There are so many other layers, and I'm good in one layer. But we have to break those stereotypes. So what did I do personally? Last spring, when I went to the Munich cybersecurity conference, there were 36 speakers and 4 women. I approached the organizers and asked, how come? And they said that when they were calling women and proposing to speak on the panel, there were so many refused. When a man was proposed to speak on the panel, he didn't even ask the heading of the panel. He said yes. And after that, he was asking, what's the topic about? So we also have to change our thinking. And we also have to be more active when we have the chance and we have to participate. So since then, I've seen some changes. But let's say in cybersecurity, there is a long, long way to go to have more women included into the discussion. And we can say the same stereotypes about many other fields. I don't think that one day we will have 50% of cosmetologists. I don't think it will happen. I don't think that we will have long-haul drivers, 50% men, 50% women. But everybody who wants should have the chance and should be encouraged and supported.
But the man without qualification could have never become a head of cyber center. Did you want to say?
I hope so. At least I did my best. We don't have dumb men in the commission.
Okay, Ásmundur, your turn.
No, I totally agree. And if we look at, we have got the unadjusted pay gap and then the adjusted pay gap. And I will never understand why, I'm a father of 3 daughters. Why should my daughters, if they work the same work, same hours, same effort, everything, as the next to them, sitting next to them, getting 5-8% lower salaries?
Absolutely.
They shouldn't. They shouldn't. That's why we have to use legislation to change this. But that is yours to decide. As I'm only a guest here.
So we agree on the problem, and we agree we don't want to have it, but the solution?
I think there is some kind of regulation already, but I'm not sure.
Regulation
this is so elementary that I think there is not, the question is not in regulation.
At least there is recommendation to make public the salaries.
But salaries are public in Finland, I know, and every year there is the day when the salaries are made public for the CEOs and board members.
Individual salaries are not public, but salary groups, yes. Yeah. And I think, again, transparency, increased transparency, maybe not on individual salaries, but on groups of different types of work. It helps also you as an employer to develop a good image as an employer. So again, through the transparency, you can actually get the positive results, I think, in the long run, because especially in countries like Estonia and Finland, where we will be running out of young people if we don't either have more immigration or get more children. So we need to attract the best people, and the best young people want to work for good employers that pay equal. I'm absolutely certain of that.
So I'm now turning over there, trying to see if there's anybody who would like to ask a question. And you can also ask a question on a topic maybe that we haven't been able to raise yet. There's one hand.
Here.
Run.
Yes, it's here. Catch it. Catch the ball. Oh, sorry. Catch the cube.
Where?
Here you are.
Thank you. I'm Eva, and I'm a psychologist, mostly specialized on change management. And actually, just when listening to Marina's story about how boys and girls conceptualize differently the job and the career perspectives, it came to my mind that perhaps the difference is not that much about the problem itself, but the way girls and boys, or men and women, conceptualize the perspectives. I mean, status-oriented, ambitious, versus content-oriented, ambitious. I mean, perhaps the ambitious, or the question of being ambitious is pretty much the same, because especially nowadays, I think women and girls are quite ambitious. They don't have that low self-esteem. But that's pretty much about the question of status that men are hunting, I think, more than women. Or what do you think?
Well, I don't see you. I think it's Eva-Maria, yeah? I don't see you. We're blinded here. But yes, I've seen that. As I said, I was in foreign service for 26 years, and I've seen young men becoming ambassadors. And they immediately, not all of them, but there are more among them who change their behavior. They become ambassadors in their head, lähevad peast suursaadikuteks. And then I've seen women who have become ambassadors. It's difficult for them to become because their requirements for themselves are much higher. They demand of them, again, it's not 100% generally. They demand from them much more. And once they become ambassadors, they see that they have to work twice as much as they've been working so far. So I would say that in Estonian Foreign Service, I don't know any woman who has become peast suursaadik, ambassador, no,
In your head.
ambassador in your head. So yes, there is the difference. The content, well, yes, I'll stop here. I'm not a psychologist. I think you know it much better. I'm saying that's just what I've seen in the Foreign Service.
Anybody else? Question?
Yes, coming. Yes, I'm very fast. You will.
Thank you very much. My name is Árni Sigurðsson. I'm the ambassador of Iceland to both Finland and Estonia. In a discussion in Iceland, I think we figured out that without regulations or legislation on this issue, particularly with regard to the gender pay gap, we would have to wait until the year, 2100 or something like that. So I would like to ask, I mean, if you are not into legislation, but you at the same time say that this is a problem, how many years can you afford to wait until you have sort of bridged the gap, if you are only using voluntary methods?
I don't know the answer. I'm sure that in the audience there are people who are much better aware, and if there's somebody, please answer the question. I don't know.
What about you, Jürgen? How many years can we afford to wait?
I think men are dying out, and they are species who should like to be protected already. Women are taking over anyway. It shouldn't be pushed too much, and I think in many cases, if things are in the way we do not like them to be, we'll see that the first answer shouldn't be regulation, and in situation where society is changing already very quickly, you shouldn't rush by regulations. I think it's overshooting. But at the same time, there are regulations. I'm sure there are paragraphs where discrimination is forbidden, and all these salaries are opened in public sector already, and but I think it has to happen step by step. I see so many qualities in women which are more suitable for modern life than in case of men. I really believe it, including leadership, and in leadership. So I really think positions of my gender are disappearing step by step. It's sad. Without regulation.
I don't see that, by the way.
Okay, but I can see it.
So we have
around me.
I need to give you a gift, glasses.
Yeah.
All right, Gunvor, you want to comment?
Just a comment. I think again it's a difference between public and private sector here. In public sector in Finland, salaries are quite regulated. It doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. If you're a teacher in a high school, that's the salary you get. But in private sector, I think it really is about individual salaries, and it would be. I would personally find it difficult to put the gender sort of stable on the salary, because it really should be individual. On the other hand, again, the reporting that you also have to do as a company is bringing transparency that will show what kind of an employer you are. which will create discussion amongst your employees. It will also affect how you can recruit. So I think, again, transparency actually is a very good tool to advance things faster.
Thank you. We need to wrap it up now because it's already 7-8 minutes over 3 o'clock. So, oh, thank you very much. You're very kind. So, do you have anything you want to comment that haven't been said till now? Would you like to summarize? Jürgen, how are we going to have like half women in Reform Party for Trans for the next elections? We have only one right now, right?
We are the party whose leader is a woman. So
yeah, but that's only one, right?
One party, yes. And, the only party whose leader is a woman is a Reform Party, and don't think we are not liberals here. Or what was the question?
Let's leave it that. We can continue.
Can I just add one little thing? Because I'm in favor of legislation when it comes to gender equality. For a few years ago, we had a visit to the Parliament of Iceland from a speaker of a parliament that has not a strong, we could say, gender equality. And one of the MPs asks this speaker of the parliament, because we're talking about speeding up process with legislation. One of this Icelandic MP asks him about the position of women in his country and what he's doing to get them more into politics and allow them to vote and etc., etc. And he had a long speech about that Iceland has a 1,000-year history as a democratic country. His country only has 100 years history as a democracy, and he's absolutely sure that in 900 years, women in Iceland will have the same position as women in his country will have the same position as Iceland. And what we can learn from this is that it doesn't happen by itself. We have to use legislation, and it's possible to use it. And this is what I wanted to end with by conclude from my speech and everything, that you shouldn't be afraid of using legislation. It's good.
You shouldn't.
900 years to go, dear Estonians. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. It was interesting to discuss with you.
Finland.